Hey everyone, my name is Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I am finally going to be doing my August wrap-up. So August started off as a really tough month for me reading-wise because I just could not finish a book. So for the first nearly 2.5 weeks of August, I did not finish anything. Like, I surely was reading, but I wasn't finishing a book, which was a really big issue, and I was a little nervous, being like, am I going to have anything to show at the end of August? Will I even be able to do an August wrap-up? And thankfully I was able to finish a book by the end of the month, so that was great. But I also just was not super impressed with myself this month. I just didn't get done what I wanted to get done, which was a few of the books that I'm physically reading, especially my reread of Beach Read. That has not been finished yet. Hopefully by the end of September you'll see it in my September wrap-up, but I want to try to keep myself accountable for these things, and I want to try to finish the books that I start. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but I mean, overall I think I had a really great August reading month because there are definitely a couple of books that I just want to wholeheartedly recommend. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get right on in to the books that I read in August. So the book that I finally did finish, the first one for August, was Do I Know You by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca, which was one of the books I believe that I talked about in my most anticipated books of 2023, that series of videos. I'm not sure which video it was in, but I'm pretty sure that I included it because last year, was it last year or was it 2 years ago? Honestly, I can't remember, but I have read one of their adult romances before, and that was The Roughest Draft. I read that either a year or two ago, and I really loved it. That was a 5-star read for me. It was so well written and so beautifully written, and such a departure from the writing that I have seen from them in their YA novels, which I do own a few of them. I've never finished any, but those are definitely on my list to complete. So I was really excited about Do I Know You, and basically this book is about this married couple, and they are, I believe, on their 5-year anniversary. And for their 5-year anniversary, they decide to go on this vacation and stay at this basically all-inclusive resort, I believe in Northern California. And at the moment, their relationship is kind of on the rocks. They are not communicating really well. They don't really know how to interact with each other anymore. They've moved past a lot of the being in love and honeymoon phases of the relationship, and are trying to figure out what this new normal is like so deep into the relationship. And so once they get to this all-inclusive resort, they decide that they are going to pretend that they don't know each other and are going to try to re-meet each other and re-fall in love and give their marriage the spark that it needs. So I love that premise, and I think that it's a really interesting thing to explore. And honestly, I haven't read very many romances that are centered on already established couples, which I find really refreshing, and I would love to get to read more books with this sort of premise. I will say, however, that I feel like if you loved The Roughest Draft, this one is definitely a bit different than that book. Not necessarily in the way that it's written or anything, it's just it doesn't give you the same sort of emotions that The Roughest Draft did. And unfortunately, this book just was not my favorite of theirs, but I am really excited to see what else they come up with. I know that they have a book called The Breakup Tour, I believe is what it's called, and it's about a pop star, and it sounds really interesting. And if you know me, you know that I love books about music, so I think that that book is one I'm going to really connect with. This one, I just didn't really feel a connection with any of the characters personally. The story was fine, and I think that maybe if I had read it when I wasn't going through this intense slump, I guess it wasn't super intense, but it felt really intense to me in the moment. But I feel like if I had been kind of on a roll and really plowing through books and really enjoying them, I might have liked this a little bit more. But I don't know if it was the structure or the characters or what it was necessarily, because it wasn't the writing. The writing was really great, and I think that Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmabrocka are a great writing duo. I just don't know what didn't work about this book, because I should have loved it. It should have been another 5-star book, and it just wasn't. I can't really pinpoint what went wrong with this book. It was just okay. It was just fine to me. The next book that I ended up reading, which I got through pretty quickly, and that was mostly probably because it's a reread and the show is out, and that is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I read this book nearly 10 years ago-ish. I might have been 18 or 19 when I first read this book, and I do remember enjoying it. It wasn't my favorite. I think I personally prefer To All the Boys I Loved Before, both the book and the movie. Like, I love To All the Boys I Loved Before, and I love Lara Jean, and I really relate to those books and I can connect with them. This book, though, it didn't really feel quite as polished, in my opinion, and I know it's probably, I think, either her debut novel or one of her like very first novels, so I can kind of see that in the writing style and in the structure and the characters. I just didn't feel like this book was like very exciting or interesting. I think that a lot of the interesting and fun parts of the story come out more in the show compared to the book. I felt like the book was so much of like flashbacks. Like, I feel like you barely got to see any of their interactions in the present day. A lot of the scenes that were set in the present day were almost used as like plot devices to trigger a memory or to trigger a flashback or whatever, and then you would just go back in time and read about Belly before this, you know, before The Summer I Turned Pretty. And that didn't really lend itself to me feeling any sort of emotion about either Belly and Conrad or Belly and Jeremiah. As I call him Jer, and I'm like, just say the full name. You don't know this person is fictional. So I didn't feel like I could really root for either couple because I didn't feel like I knew them. I didn't feel a connection to either ship. But I will say that I think that the people who did the TV show adaptation did a really good job, because so much of the book ended up in the show. Of course, there were things that were added and like a few things that were taken away, but for the most part, like, it stayed pretty close to the source material. Like, the integrity of the story was there, so I thought that was really cool to see. But yeah, I decided that I'm not going to continue with this series. I don't care enough, in my opinion. I don't know, I just didn't really feel any sort of draw to Jeremiah or Conrad in the books. I feel like the best part of these books, specifically the audiobooks, is that they have the actors narrating the books. I think honestly that's the best part, is that you get to hear Lola Tung, and she's an incredible narrator. Like, I was so shocked that she was such a good narrator, and that I really actually enjoyed listening to her as Belly in this like recording. And I know that in the second and third books they have both of the boys, the ones who play Conrad and Jeremiah, doing the narration as well. I'm blanking on their names at the moment. I think one of them's name is Gavin. The other one, I can't remember his name. Chris. There we go. I remembered. I had to see their Instagrams in my brain because that's where I follow them, is on Instagram. So I'm like, let me go into my Instagram brain for a moment. But yeah, I just wasn't super in love with this book, and I will not be continuing with the series. Finally, onto a book that I absolutely loved, and I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars, and that is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This is one that I kind of just started on a whim because I started to feel myself getting back into a slump, and I'm like, you know what? Just pick a book that you are going to have a lot of fun with, that you don't really have to think too hard about. Just pick a book and read it and stick with it and see where it takes you. And so I chose The Wishing Game because I had it already checked out from Libby, and I'm so glad that I decided to read it because it really sparked my love of reading again. Like, I was like, you know what, this is so much fun, I'm having such a great time, and I cannot recommend this book enough. It is definitely a little silly and there are moments that are a little corny, but overall it's just such a fun and adorable book. And basically this one follows a teacher's assistant and she is super broke. She can barely make rent, she can barely take care of herself, but she has really formed a connection with this young boy that she has helped teach, and he happens to be in foster care. I believe that like both of his parents passed away and he has no other living relatives, and she really wants to adopt him, this teacher's assistant or part-time teacher or whatever she is. But unfortunately she's broke, she can't really afford to take care of him, and so she's really trying to figure out how she can get a better job, how she can make more money, etc. She's been a really big fan of this children's author, and he's really prolific. He's written like dozens and dozens of children's novels, and they're all kind of centered around these like very plucky children who go on these magical adventures and learn lessons and whatever. And so one day he decides to create this sort of challenge, and basically it's like a scavenger hunt sort of, but also like these like daily challenges or whatever. And he picks out a handful of his past readers who he has really connected with, who used to send him letters and stuff like that, and decides to have them compete to win this very highly coveted manuscript. So it's kind of like a Willy Wonka situation, which I found really, really charming and cute. The main character really obviously wants to win this competition in order to get the manuscript and sell it to the highest bidder, and then she'd be able to take care of this young boy. And so she is picked to be part of the competition, and that's kind of, I think, as much as you really need to know in order to go into this book. It is really sweet, it is really cute, it's very magical, but in a really realistic way, which I loved, and I think that I would love to read more books that are kind of like that. It also kind of reminded me of a real life modern like Caraval, the Night Circus, stuff like that. It's very reminiscent, very whimsical, and there's also a lot of interesting family dynamics and friendship dynamics and stuff like that. There is also a little bit of a love story that is written in through the plot, which I found really cute as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I read it as an audiobook, obviously, and I thought the audiobook was really fun. It just really took me on a little journey, and I highly recommend it. I feel like I don't hear enough people talk about this one, and it's just a super cute little read, and I actually think it'd be kind of perfect for the fall season. The second to last book that I read was Emma of 83rd Street by Audrey Beleza, and there is another author, Emily Harding. This is another co-authored book, which typically I'm not a huge fan of co-authored books, but I've had a lot of luck lately, I feel like, with books that are co-authored and having them be actually pretty good. This is obviously an Emma by Jane Austen retelling, and I loved it so much. I haven't had like a really solid 5-star read in such a long time, at least it feels like such a long time, but I just loved this book. It was so fantastic. The second that I ended it, I wish that I could have just like restarted it from the very beginning and read it all over again. It was so much fun, and I'm devastated that this is only like the first book from these two authors. Like, I need so many more of them. I need them to retell Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice, and like even like Northanger Abbey I would love to see, because I feel like that never gets adapted or retold, because this one was just so inspired and so much fun. And I don't know, there's something about the Emma story that I absolutely love. I've personally never actually read the book, but I have seen like every adaptation. I loved Emma Approved on YouTube back in the day. I watched that and I loved it. And there's just something about the Emma story that just really gets to me and like really is just so satisfying to watch play out, and this book was no exception. It was so much fun. It was so cute. It was very much like, if you liked Gossip Girl, like the books back in the day, you would love this book. It was so like New York, and Emma is like very like fabulous and like very stylish, and like I loved it so much. I feel like it's hard to kind of talk about what the plot is, because it's basically just the plot of Emma, and if you've seen Clueless, you know the plot of Emma. But yeah, this takes place in modern New York. Emma is an art student. I believe that she's like studying art history or something like that, and she's doing her master's, and she ends up meeting this girl in her class who she becomes really good friends with. And obviously Emma and her family are close to the Knightleys. One of them is married to her sister. The other one is a very close friend whom we all know what happens there. Yeah, so it's just really hard to talk about this book, because it's like, duh, it's Emma. Like, I think we all know what the story is, and the characters and the plot points and all of that. So if you like Emma by Jane Austen, if you like Clueless, if you like Gossip Girl, stuff like that, you're gonna love this book. It's so much fun. And the very last book that I read in the month of August was Idle Burning by Rin Usami, translated by Asa Yoneda. And this one I kind of had a little bit of trouble with. And I'm not sure if it's because of the writing itself, like the storytelling, or if it's the translation. I'm not really sure, but I got something completely different from that book than I believe was intended. Basically, this book is about this school-aged girl, I believe she might be a teenager, and she is really struggling in school, but she is also a really big fangirl. She has this blog, she has, you know, her idol that she follows and is really passionate about. I don't think I'd call it the inciting incident, because basically this happens kind of a little bit before the book starts, but her idol is caught on camera punching a woman. I feel like the book doesn't totally make it clear whether the woman was a fan or a personal friend of this idol, or what she was in relation to him. It kind of goes back and forth speculating what the relationship is, but basically he is caught on camera, and the book kind of follows the fallout from that incident. So what I got from this book was, I thought that it was critiquing the fandom experience, the sort of like fangirl, overwhelming dedication to an idol, to the point where it is detrimental to your relationships, to your school, to your job, to your life in general, and how that dedication and obsession can corrupt you. That's what I thought was kind of the thing to take away from this book. However, at the end of the book, there is an author's note where the author talks about what her intentions were with this book, and basically she whittles it down to, it's about cancel culture. So she really focuses on the fact that this idol has been caught punching a woman, and all of the criticism he gets from that, all of the speculation, all of the, you know, destruction of his career, stuff like that. That's kind of what seems like she was trying to focus on. I got some of that as well from this book, but I didn't think that that was necessarily the main focus, but I guess it was. And I read a few other reviews that kind of had that same issue of like, I thought this book was about one thing, but it ended up being about another thing that I didn't really see as the main concern. So yeah, I think that's where the book kind of lost me. I don't know if I wish that I hadn't read the author's note. Maybe I would have felt a little bit differently about this book. But knowing what her intentions were as like a critique of cancel culture, it kind of lost me there. So personally, it wasn't my favorite. I wish that I had liked it a little bit more. I did really appreciate her kind of like second author's note talking about how she was inspired by her younger brother who struggled a lot in school and struggled with a disability that nobody really understood or recognized, and she used a lot of that inspiration for her main character, which I did really appreciate and I found to be really touching. But yeah, I didn't really enjoy the book as much as I thought I would. But I do highly recommend it if you are interested in reading it. It is really well written. And I did like the focus of the main character. I thought that she was really interesting to read about. So I do highly recommend it if you are interested. It just was not one of my favorites. Okay, so those are the 5 books that I read in August. I had a really interesting reading month, especially since it started so late in the month. Like, I literally did not finish a book until like the 16th or 17th of August. It was really cutting it close. So hopefully September will look a little bit better, look a little bit more balanced. I have a lot of exciting books that I want to read and a couple that I'm currently in the middle of. So I cannot wait to talk about those at the end of the month. And I hope you all enjoyed this wrap up. Let me know if you've read any of these books before and what your thoughts were. Also, go ahead and let me know if you read any fun and exciting books in August. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are me down below. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye!